The meadow, as twilight surrendered to the embrace of night, transformed into an enchanted realm. Towering blades of emerald grass, kissed by the day's last breath of warmth, now stood like silent sentinels, their tips occasionally swaying in the gentle night breeze. Wildflowers, painted in hues of lavender, crimson, and gold, which had basked openly in the sun's glory, now folded their delicate petals, offering their sweet perfume to the nocturnal air. A nearby babbling brook, its waters sparkling under the faint moonlight filtering through the leaves of ancient oak trees, murmured a soothing melody, a constant lullaby to the awakening creatures of the night, and as the stars began to pepper the inky canvas above. Another kind of magic stirred in the meadow, the awakening of the fireflies. One by one, tiny sparks ignited amongst the foliage, like scattered diamonds on a velvet cloth. These weren't just random flickers, they were the lanterns of the meadow, the gentle illuminators of the night, and the sparkling language of the firefly folk. Among this luminous community lived a little firefly named Flicker. He resided within the sheltered embrace of a large emerald fern, its fronds unfurling like a protective cradle. While his neighbors' lights blazed with confidence and brilliance, Flicker's own spark was a delicate thing, a whisper of light in a chorus of glows. It was a soft, steady luminescence, akin to the gentle warmth of a distant ember rather than the bold, attention-grabbing flash of a newly kindled flame. From his leafy haven, Flicker would watch, wide-eyed, as the other fireflies embarked on their nightly adventures. They danced and twirled in intricate patterns, their lights blinking in perfect synchronization, telling tales of the day's finds, sharing secrets whispered on the wind, and playfully chasing each other through the moonlit grass. Their light was their laughter, their greeting, their way of connecting in the vast darkness. Flicker longed to join their radiant ballet, to be an active participant in their luminous conversations. He yearned to feel the thrill of a swift chase, his own light confidently blinking in response to a friendly greeting. But a wave of shyness would always wash over him. His tiny spark felt inadequate, a pale imitation of the vibrant displays around him. He imagined the other fireflies, with their powerful glows, wouldn't even notice his faint signal, or worse, would find it amusingly weak. He would often sit alone in his fern, practicing. He'd squeeze his tiny abdomen, the source of his light, with all the might his small body could muster. He'd puff himself up, hoping to amplify his gentle glow, to transform it into a respectable flash. But no matter how hard he tried, his light remained a soft, unwavering shimmer. It was as if his inner spark, though present, was simply designed to be quieter, less insistent than the others. He observed the social interactions of the other fireflies. When one shared a particularly funny story, perhaps about a clumsy beetle or a dewdrop that had almost swept them away, their lights would punctuate the punchline with a series of rapid, bright flashes, the firefly equivalent of boisterous laughter. Flicker would try his best to add his own luminescent chuckle, blinking his little light as enthusiastically as he could. But his faint, delayed response often went unnoticed in the flurry of brighter flashes. He sometimes wondered if they even heard his silent attempts to join in their merriment. Mimicking their complex flashing patterns proved even more challenging. The other fireflies communicated through intricate sequences of blinks, their lights forming fleeting codes in the night air. Flicker would watch intently, trying to replicate their signals, but his dim light made it difficult to create the sharp, distinct flashes required for clear communication. He worried that he was getting the messages wrong, that he would accidentally send a confusing or even silly reply, making him a target of gentle ridicule. Despite his insecurities, Flicker cherished the hour when the entire firefly community converged in the heart of the meadow for their grand nightly light show. It was a spectacle of breathtaking beauty. Hundreds of lights danced in harmony, weaving mesmerizing patterns against the dark backdrop of the trees. They formed shimmering circles, cascading waves of light, and intricate spirals that seemed to reach for the stars. Flicker would position himself at the very edge of the meadow, hidden amongst the taller grasses, his own tiny light almost invisible in the dazzling panorama. He longed to be in the center of the display, his light contributing to the overall brilliance. He imagined how wonderful it would feel to have his spark recognized, to be a visible part of the collective glow. But the fear of being overshadowed, of his dimness being even more apparent in the presence of such radiance, kept him on the periphery. One particular night, the meadow prepared for its usual luminous celebration. The air was still and warm, filled with the gentle chirping of crickets and the distant hoot of an owl. The fireflies began to gather, their lights twinkling with anticipation. But as the first few elaborate patterns began to unfold, a change swept across the meadow. A thick, ethereal fog began to roll in, silently and swiftly, from the direction of the old willow tree by the brook. It wasn't a light, wispy fog, this was a dense, clinging mist, the kind that seemed to swallow light and sound. The bright flashes of the fireflies, which had been so clear just moments before, now became blurred and distorted, their sharp edges softened and diffused by the moisture-laden air. The intricate light patterns dissolved into hazy smudges, making it impossible for the fireflies to see each other clearly, let alone communicate effectively. A hush fell over the meadow. The usual joyful blinking faltered, replaced by hesitant, worried flickers. Fireflies blinked anxiously, trying to locate their friends and family, but the fog acted like a thick curtain, obscuring everything beyond a short distance. "Can anyone see where they're going?" buzzed a firefly, his voice laced with nervousness. His once brilliant light appeared as a fuzzy orb in the oppressive mist. "I can't see my friend Luna," cried another, her light blinking frantically, the bright flashes quickly being absorbed by the fog. Her distress was palpable in the uneven rhythm of her light. In this chaotic scene, Flicker, who usually sought the shadows, found himself in an unexpected position of advantage. His soft, steady glow, which had always seemed like a weakness, now possessed a unique quality. Unlike the bright, flashing lights of the others, which scattered and diffused in the fog, Flicker's gentle luminescence seemed to penetrate the mist a little more effectively. It was a constant, unwavering beacon in the swirling white. Without thinking, driven by a sense of concern for his fellow fireflies, Flicker began to blink his tiny light steadily. It was a simple, unhurried rhythm, a small but persistent signal in the overwhelming fog. Another firefly, disoriented and alone, noticed the faint, consistent glow through the dense mist. "Is that a light?" he called out, his voice a tiny buzz of hope. Flicker blinked again, a little more deliberately this time, focusing all his energy into maintaining his steady beam. "Yes. Over here." Another firefly called, his voice closer now, as he navigated towards Flicker's gentle light. Slowly, cautiously, one by one, the lost fireflies began to spot Flicker's unwavering glow. In the swirling, disorienting fog, his small spark became a reliable guide, a fixed point of reference in the confusing whiteness. They followed his light, their own diminished and uncertain glows trailing behind him like hesitant followers. The journey through the fog was slow and tense. The fireflies, usually so agile and swift, now moved with caution, their antennae twitching, trying to sense their surroundings. The only reliable guide was Flicker's steady light, a comforting presence in the oppressive mist. He led them through the tangled grasses and around the damp, glistening leaves, his tiny spark illuminating the path just enough to prevent collisions and missteps. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Flicker's gentle light guided the last of the lost fireflies back to the familiar open space in the center of the meadow. As they emerged from the fog, the other fireflies buzzed with immense relief, their lights flickering with renewed vigor. "Flicker, you saved us!" exclaimed Sparky, his bright light, now clear again in the open air, shining with genuine gratitude. He zipped around Flicker, his light blinking an enthusiastic thank you. "Your light, though so small, was so steady and clear in the fog," said Luna, the firefly who had cried out earlier. Her light shone softly on Flicker. "We could see it when our brighter flashes just disappeared into the white. It was like a little star that didn't get swallowed by the clouds." Flicker was overwhelmed by their words. He had never imagined his dim light could be so important, so helpful. He had always seen it as a flaw, a reason to stay hidden. But tonight, it had been his greatest strength. From that night onward, the other fireflies regarded Flicker with a newfound respect. They had witnessed the unique power of his gentle glow. They understood that sometimes, in certain circumstances, a steady, unwavering light was far more valuable than a bright, flashing one. In moments of uncertainty or when the conditions were challenging, they would often seek out Flicker's calm luminescence. They no longer teased him, not even in jest. They understood that his different kind of light was not a sign of weakness but a special characteristic, a unique contribution to their community. They started including him in their games and conversations more readily, knowing that his quiet presence and steady glow were just as important as their own vibrant displays. Flicker himself began to see his light in a new way. He still admired the brilliance of the other fireflies. And occasionally, a fleeting wish for a brighter spark would cross his mind. But he no longer felt ashamed of his gentle glow. He had learned that his unique light had its own special purpose, its own distinct value. It was a reminder that even the smallest of sparks can make a big difference. He started to participate more confidently in the nightly gatherings. While he might not have the most dazzling flash, his steady light provided a comforting presence, a reliable point in the ever-changing patterns of the other fireflies. He discovered that his even glow was particularly soothing to the younger fireflies, who sometimes found the bright, rapid flashes of the adults a little overwhelming. One night, a group of young fireflies were feeling scared by the sounds of the forest, the rustling of leaves, the croaking of unseen creatures. Their lights flickered nervously. Their parents tried to reassure them with calming blinks, but the youngsters remained anxious. Flicker, noticing their distress, positioned himself nearby and simply kept his light on, a soft, unwavering beacon of calm. The young fireflies, drawn to his gentle glow, huddled around him, their own lights gradually becoming steadier as they felt safe and secure in his presence. As the nights turned into weeks and the meadow continued its cycle of growth and renewal, Flicker continued to embrace his unique light. He learned to use it with confidence, knowing that it had its own special power. He was no longer just the little firefly with a dim light, he was Flicker. The firefly who had guided his community through the fog, the firefly whose steady glow brought comfort and reassurance. He still loved to watch the grand light shows in the center of the meadow, and now, he often joined in, his gentle spark adding its own subtle beauty to the collective display. He might not create the most intricate patterns or the brightest flashes, but his steady light was a constant, reliable presence, a testament to the fact that every light, no matter how small, has its own important role to play in illuminating the night. As another night deepened, painting the meadow in shades of silver and shadow, Flicker nestled snugly back into his cozy fern leaf, his little light glowing softly. He thought about his journey, from feeling inadequate to finding his own unique strength. He smiled a small, inner smile, a feeling of warmth spreading through his tiny body, much like the gentle glow he emitted. He might not be the brightest firefly in the meadow, but he was Flicker, the little firefly with a tiny spark that had shone brightly when it mattered most, a spark that had guided, comforted, and ultimately, shown him the beauty of being exactly who he was. And as he drifted off to a peaceful sleep, his tiny light continued to glow, a silent promise of another magical night in the meadow.